Hello guys, welcome to the C++ tutorial series. In this video, we will learn our Lambda functions or Lambda expressions in C++. My name is Kafui and welcome to my channel mods.dev. Please subscribe and like to help the channel grow and turn on the bell notification icon to get notified whenever I release a content on the channel. With that said, let's dive in. In C++, a Lambda function or a Lambda expression is an anonymous function that can be defined for a simple operation. So before we start coding, I'll just go ahead and then explain to you the syntax of a Lambda function first. So in general, this is how the syntax of a Lambda function looks like. So the first part, which is in square brackets, is the capture clause. The capture clause captures variables from the surrounding scope and makes those variables accessible inside the Lambda function. The next part of a Lambda function is the parameter list, which is in parentheses. In the parameter list, you can specify input parameters for the Lambda function. The next part is what? The return type. So the return type specifies the return type of the Lambda function. If you omit the return type, it is deduced by the compiler. So with this arrow syntax over here, we can specify the return type of this Lambda function, either an integer or a boolean or a character or a double. Then finally, in the function body, that is where we put in, or that's where we define the behavior of the Lambda function, or we implement our code. So in general, this is how the syntax of a Lambda function looks like. So let's go back to our IDE, and then I'll just define a simple Lambda function for you to see. So I'll just go ahead using the auto specifier and say my function and assign it to a Lambda function quickly. Just a simple Lambda function, and then I'll std cout, and then I'll just output hello world to the console and save. And then finally, I'll just call my function with parentheses. By so doing, I have declared a Lambda function, and you can see from the IDE that it is specifying that the return type of this function is what? Void, because we are not returning anything from it. When I go ahead and run my code with Shift plus F10 shortcut, we get hello world outputted in the console. So this is one way, or this is a simple example of what? A Lambda function. The next example I would like to show you is a simple sum function. So I'll go ahead and write sum and assign it to a Lambda function. In the parameters, we take in an integer x and then another integer y, and then I'll allow the compiler to deduce the return type. Then I'll just return, let me write the return properly, return a simple x plus what? Y. And then I'll just go ahead std cout, then the name of the function call, and pass in two integers, and then terminate and save. Let me write the name of the function properly, sum. So this is how you can define a Lambda function that takes in what? A list of parameters. It can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, depending on what you want. When I go ahead and run my code, hopefully we get 40 outputted in the console. So this is how you can define a Lambda function that takes in a list of parameters. The next one we'll look at is how to define a Lambda function and pass in what? A capture variables or capture variables. So I'll just go ahead and initialize variable a to, let's say, 20, another variable int b, they are both integers, which is what? 30, and then I'll go ahead and define my function, print values, and set it to a Lambda function. So I'll just pass in a, then comma b. Since there are two variables, use the comma to separate those two variables. It will not take in any list of parameters, and I'll just std cout a, and then a space, and then b, and terminate it. Then I'll go ahead and then execute my function with parentheses. When I save and then run my code, we get the values 20 and 30 outputted in the console. So this is how we can define a Lambda function that takes in what? A list of variables in its capture clause. Now this function, I can still pass in what? A list of parameters. So I'll just say int integer x, or let me just use character, the character data type, character x, and then another character, let me write that properly, character y. and then I'll just, let's say, std cout x and then y, and then I'll just print a new line at the end of this statement. And when I save and then run my code, we get an error. Let me rectify that quickly. Okay, I have to pass in what characters. I'll just pass in a, then what b. I didn't pass in my argument. That's why we had that error. So now we are good to go. So we have 20 and 30, and then we have a and b outputted in the console. So this is how we can define Lambda functions in C++. Now, one thing you should note is that in the capture clause, I can pass in a reference to these integer variables. So I can just pass in a reference using the ampersand symbol or ampersand operator in C++. Then in my function, I'll just increment the value of x, a and b by 1. And then when I save that and run my code, so we get what? 21 and 31. So it will take in the reference of this variable and then manipulate it, so it will just add 1 to it, so it will be 21 and 31. And then when I run my code, as we saw earlier, so 21 and 31, and then a and then b. So this is how we can work with Lambda functions in C++. One thing you should note is that Lambda functions are mostly used with C++ standard library algorithms. So like sort, the sort algorithm, the find algorithm, the for each algorithm, the transform algorithm, and so on. So that's it for this video on Lambda functions in C++. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section for discussion. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.